Good evening, campers. It's me, Kira, and as part of Plaque, we have read After Sappho by Selby Wynn Schwartz. After Sappho has been published by Beggar Press, and some of you might be aware of them due to them publishing Duck's Newburyport, a book that I threw a cinnamon bun at because I hated it that much. Moments like this when we go from Gnu Ganesh to Gnuff is Gnuff. Get over it. I have a delicious homemade cinnamon bun. I've spent 6 hours making these, and now I'm going to throw it at this stupid bloody book because this is a 1 out of 10. What? Me and Beggar have an interesting history. The majority of books that I've read by them, I don't particularly like, but nevertheless, I appreciate what they do, and that is produce books that I don't think they would get a chance anywhere else, and I really appreciate that, and that explains this cover. For full disclosure, and maybe for full no, I'm going to turn the ring light back off for that. That was horrendous. For transparency, I pay the £3.50 a month for Galley Beggar to keep doing what they are doing. And so, as a Galley buddy, my name is there. Kieran Evans. It's right there. That's my name right there, peeps. So yes, that's how I've got this first edition printed, and it's quite nice seeing some other book reviewers' names in the back. So knowing the Galley Beggar have a penchant for a creative bed. What is After Sappho? Well, in the acknowledgement, an excerpt of this book was published in speculative non-fiction, which is a term that my head cannot get around, because speculative is the what if, which is why it lends itself to be predominantly prefixed onto science fiction. Like, what if this happened? What could be the outcome? My problem with speculative non-fiction is, does that mean, like, what if we apply this non-fiction to a scenario? I'm not entirely understanding it, and if anyone can explain it to me, like, in layman's terms, please do, because this head feels as though that is an oxymoron and a half. Reader, he digressed, but are we even surprised? What I would speculate has happened since that publication of the excerpt, and now the publication of After Sappho. Schwartz has been in conversation with the co-founders of Beggar Press, Ellie and Sam, because again, in the acknowledgement, the publishing house decided that this was going to be a novel. Therefore, it doesn't seem to be the original idea. That's a fun little tidbit, but it might be worth keeping that in mind as you're moving through this novel. So what is After Sappho about? Well, before we get on to there, I think it's worth saying who Sappho is, because not everyone, would you believe, knows who Sappho is. I didn't know who Sappho was until it was Melissa Broder's The Pisces. So that was in 2018. I'd never come across the name. I didn't know anything about Sappho. I had to do a little bit of a Google. And that's okay if you don't know. If you've never studied the Greek poets from the 6th century BCE, you're not going to be introduced to Sappho. However, you might know of the term Sapphic, which denotes the romantic love between two women. And you might know the term lesbian, because Sappho of Lesbos is where we get the term lesbian. Another fun little tidbit that I know is that lesbian was, like, trademarked for people who lived on Lesbos, and they were people from Lesbos who didn't want the term lesbian to be transferred to women who were sexually attracted and engaged with each other. And because I am a generous soul, lesbian meant fellatio back in the day. And you know that you had an impact on the world being called the 10th Muse when... Akiva, just get through it. I think you know you've made it in literature when you can literally change the word blowjob into the complete juxtaposition. Sappho of Lesbos, everyone. She was, as I've already said, the 10th Muse, and also known as the poetess. She is considered one of the greatest Greek poets during this time. And what did she write? Well, we don't actually know the extent of this. The majority of Sappho's works are lost, and all we have are fragments of her poems. And if you are to seek out Sappho's works, all the translations vary wholly because you're basing it on these dense, semantic-filled words that people are trying to piece together. They're trying to see what has fallen through the gap of what Sappho was trying to get across through her poetry. We're not going to know the answer. All we could do is hypothesize, and that's where I think Schwartzkopf, stick with Schwartz. Selby Wynn Schwartz? Selby Wynn Schwartz. Which one do I go for? Schwartz? Which one have I done? I think I've been changing all the way through this review. Nevertheless, this book is told within fragments, in vignettes, about who? Well, people who have come after Sappho's time. And the majority of this novel revolves around going into the turning of the 20th century and a little bit on. We do move throughout time, non-chronologically, but the bulk of this novel is set within the turn of the 20th century. The main focus of this work is Lena Paletti, who made movements, but we also have Josephine Barker, Sarah Bernhardt, Colette, and all these postcards come with the Galley Beggar. Does it sound like I'm advertising them? Yeah. Am I actually paid by Galley Beggar? No. But do I think people should support Galley Beggar? Yes. Even though I don't predominantly enjoy the books that they publish. Still yes. But yes, the protagonist, if you want to call it the protagonist, would be Lena Paletti. And we're going to learn about her life, which is why I would actually classify this as speculative biography. There is a realm of notes in the back where Schwartz says where she's drawn inspiration from, where she's had to fill in the gaps, where she doesn't know the information. Due to the nature of these fragments, this book doesn't really have a plot. It doesn't really have like a linear narrative or direction. Instead, it's more mapping the interactions that these women have had, who all want to be themselves, who are all trying to get rights for themselves, and despite the distance of the proxemics in which their relationships have occurred, that they're all driven to wanting to be themselves. They're wanting to love who they want. They want to be seen for who they are, but just like Sappho, they want other women to be seen for who they are. They want people to have a voice if they are lesbian or indeed Sapphic. And I want to talk about two very specific examples within After Sappho that will give you an understanding of what Schwartz is doing without lecturing you. So the first one is that there is a play which Lena Paletti goes to see, A Doll's House by Henrik Ibsen. Now, Ibsen, apart from Shakespeare, he might actually be on par. He at current moment is one of the most performed playwrights. Ibsen was highly influential, and within this book it talks about how Ibsen was invited to the Scandinavian, I think it was like an art house within Rome, and Ibsen, being a feminist, said, well, I think women should be able to come into this club. I think that's something that should be done. That's what A Doll's House is about. It's about Nora decided, well, I don't want to be a wife and I'm going to put myself forward. When she leaves the house in the end of the act, that door shutting is her freedom. It might sound like everyone's hearts dropping, but really that is the sound of Nora's freedom. And Ibsen wanted that. But After Sappho tells us that Nora's based on an interaction that Ibsen had with a woman who wrote a manuscript and sent it to him, Laura. But Ibsen didn't like her writing and wrote back. She decided to burn the manuscript, but manuscripts don't burn. So Ibsen used Laura as his archetype for Nora. Therefore, what is highlighted is that Ibsen had to exploit a woman. He had to use her own story in order for him to try and push for women's rights. Throughout this book, there are numerous examples where that occurs, where it looks as though the men are doing the right thing for women, but in order to do that, they equally have to quell how women behave, how they want to live. The last example that I want to give, and I think it is the most powerful part throughout all of this, and am I completely biased because it is Virginia Woolf's best work? Absolutely, there's no doubt about it. Virginia Woolf wrote Orlando. That was her love letter to Vita. Orlando was published the day that Orlando says is the last day. They coincide and cross over, showing that literature is this living being, that it doesn't just stop, and that the influence can really change people. And Vita felt as though she could only be herself through Woolf's love letter, through her writing, through her publication, and knowing that that body of work will continue on, that it will be continually enjoyed by readers, because it is Virginia Woolf's best work, and I will fight anyone else who says Mrs. Dalloway. I don't care. Stay on track, people. But that is what Sappho has done. This work of Sappho's is broken. It's missing. It's lost. But still, her writing has permeated through history, be that directly or indirectly. The fact that someone like Sappho existed, the fact that someone like Sappho created, and the fact that Sappho lives on. What are the endless opportunities for Sappho? This book showcases that the legacies of literature and the Sapphic legacy lives on, and it ebbs. It's not constrained to a genre, it's not constrained to a time. Legacies truly are transcendental, and did a poet from Lesbos in the 6th century BCE ever, or could ever, tell that someone more than a millennia on would be influenced by her works, could be influenced by her words that are not whole? Absolutely not. I think this work is everything that I love about literature, that it's a conversation, it's not an argument, that there are permutations throughout. And I think Schwartz does it in a very succinct, a very simple but effective approach. And this form and structure lends to this wanting to fill the gaps, trying to understand what is influential, what is important, and really what is the legacy of all of these women. And for me, After Sappho is like a clear 8. It is like a succinct 8. And if you turn the 8 on the side, oh, it's an infinity symbol, because the legacy of literature is infinite. Wow, we really went, yeah, that's a strong way to end a review. Yeah, stick that on a t-shirt. I want a t-shirt of that.